She says they're not moving on after the hiring of Dr. Gerrita Postlewait as the new superintendent of Charleston County Schools. And in this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with Dot Scott to talk about the school board's decision, unity, the Emanuel 9, and of course, the Confederate flag. So Dot, you're back in the headlines again, as I told you over the phone on Monday. Tell me about Monday, because you actually were standing in front of the podium at the Charleston County School Board meeting at 75 Calhoun, and you two were actually there to address the board about the hiring of Gerrita Postlewait. Tell me, where were your mind and heart?
My mind and heart, as always when it comes to the Charleston County School Board and the district, it's about the children, particularly the African American children, who I feel like oftentimes decisions are made that are not in their best interest. Oftentimes the parents of those children are not being listened to. I don't think they're even being heard. It's as if we have a process by which you can come to the board and express concerns, and we can almost always believe that if what the minority parents want for their children anywhere conflicts with what the majority parents want for their children, the minority children will lose out every time, even if it means taking a school that the majority children are now occupying so we can move forward. There's always an explanation why we're doing it. So my heart and mind at this point is we must, not should, must stand up for these kids, because there should be no greater priority for African Americans, or people of goodwill, quite frankly, about if we don't educate the children, what we're seeing, this melee of all of the violence and misbehavior. These things continue unless we educate all the children.
You told the Postal Courier this quote, "We will not move on because the hiring of the new superintendent was not done in a proper manner." Her, meaning Gerrita Postlewait, being hired doesn't change that. What's wrong is wrong. We will not move on. Besides the words "not moving on," the words "not done in a proper manner" actually stuck out to me. Tell me, what manner did you believe she was hired in?
Now, this is what we, and sometimes here so the rumor that you hear sometimes are stronger than what folks are actually saying. That the process in and of itself set us back to thinking at the time of the hiring of Dr. McGinley. They went away from what we call the precedent, which means that you go through a national search and you put. So we had some concerns at that time. Then we were able to figure out. Well, let's say our deduction is if she was not a part of some convoluted stuff, and now the process was made that we already have someone in-house that is qualified, then at least we needed to give that person the benefit of the doubt to do the job. We knew her. She had been here. She had served under Dr. Marie Goodloe Johnson, so we knew what we had there. So we then fast forward to this situation.
Sure.
Because while we have not always agreed with Dr. McGinley, because we understand in regards to who your superintendent is,
sure,
the board directs, the board decides, the board is the problem if there is a problem.
Okay.
Because they have the power to hire and fire that superintendent if the superintendent is not doing what thus say the board. So when the opportunity came now for the background, which was an ugly black background for Dr. McGinley to move to be what we call quote unquote resigned.
Okay.
We had been working with Dr. McGinley. We had our concern. We accepted the fact that she was our superintendent. We're willing to work with her. Now, once she was ousted, and you had in place someone with the exact same title that Dr. McGinley had worked the last 5 years with Dr. McGinley, was the chief academic officer.
That's Dr. Lisa Herring.
Dr. Lisa Herring. Here was, a precedent had already been set. The first thing that happened is, we're going to pull someone with no academia at all, only financial background. We're going to let that person happen to be Michael Bobby. Now we're going to have him as the interim superintendent. that message came very clear. We're not going to consider her. And it had nothing to do with, at that point, whether or not she was qualified, because if that's the case, then our board chair lied, because the first thing she came out, and I'm going to repeat it, the board chair lied when she said, we don't need to do a national search because I really think we got the two best candidates in-house. Now, for whatever reason, and we have some reason to understand why Mr. Bobby decided he would withdraw his name. Well, then you're here with only one candidate that you already said you don't need to do a national search because we have the best two. One now gone, we only have the one person. So here goes in, well, we can't have this. We now need to add someone else to the pot. Well, our concern was, if you were going to add someone else to the pot, at least allow people who are in-house already to be able to add their name to the pot. Instead, we were then given another nominee from the attorney. And your question?
No, I was just going to say, I was talking with someone who used to work for the Charleston County School District, and we were talking about Dr. Lisa Herring, and she basically said that Dr. Lisa Herring was collateral damage.
Collateral damage. She was, and it was sad, and at some point I'm saying, I cannot even imagine what she's going through right now. But for her to have been there with Dr. McGinley, we end up with an excellent rating during her tenure with the top person who moved out.
Sure.
And for her to be disrespected to the level that Cindy Von Coates did. Here is someone, which I pretty much think with a high school education, that decides that this lady is not even qualified, but yet you used her as a pawn to make it look like you were going through a legitimate process. Okay. Now, to me, every board member that went along with that, including Dr. Postlewait, if she knew that her name was included in what was supposed to be a private in-house search. Now, I don't know where she's coming from, but if it was me, or as I've heard other people say, given all of the turmoil that has gone on around this search, sure, with people other than the NAACP said it would do her well not to accept the position. I think the mindset of, you just go ahead and take it because they'll quiet down, they'll go away. And that to me is why, absolutely not. If we are not willing to stop us going back to the separate and unequal schools, then we may as well say, it doesn't matter to us what. And Black lives really don't matter. And our children absolutely don't. So that's where we're saying, no, we're not going to go away. We may not know how it all going to end out, okay, but we are going to continue to fight, whether it's through legal means, through civil disobedience, through whatever. The message needs to be clear. Okay. First, we didn't trust the process and have reason to do. Now we have no confidence in the new superintendent coming in under those environments because, quite frankly, if she's willing to work with a group that has done what this group did to our community, then to me, she becomes part of the process.
That's what you told the Post Inquirer. You basically said this. She's just as much involved in this mess, this racist and biased behavior as anyone. Tell me, when did you really reach that conclusion?
Well, when you come from a district that has a really poor record on diversity and inclusion, okay, when conversation with these people, if you didn't ask, you should have asked as a candidate. You're not Dr. Herring, you're not here, so you don't know. What are the issues around race? When you walk into a situation where you know, or should know, that we have public schools with barely any minority children in it, when you got academic magnet this year that only admitted one black child. When you know that, and you say you want to be a part of the process, if you already know that everything that has to do about diversity to try to fix this, which is what the fixing of diversity was the ticket that got Dr. McGinley out of the job. Okay. Don't deal with any diversity issue. Don't deal with the kids at Academic Magnet using racist, because until the killing of these 9 people at Emanuel, we had stopped talking about racism because the only person that dared talk about it was NAACP, and that's what we do. They're the race baiters. But just because people don't want to talk about incest, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So we want to be clear that we knew and never doubted it, that we had these racist decisions being made. We try to keep in a link with those folks who would dare to share with us what they know as things happen. But even if you're not told, the facts don't lie. You know, we can have opinion about things. The facts does not lie. When we get complaint about, and I actually had a situation, and this was maybe 2 years ago, and Dr. McGinley was able to help us to get it worked out. We had 9 young students graduated from grade school from a private school. 8 of those students were white, 1 of them were a black girl. They accepted every one of those 8 and denied her access. So the conversation began with us after the parent called us, and we started dealing with it. And finally were able to get that child in. But as we grow business, particularly in North Charleston, in the Charleston area, and we've got all the executives coming in, they want the best for their children. So they're given priority over our children, and even some poor white children. So here we are with a situation that as we grow and we're bringing jobs and we're talking jobs, but if you're not educating the children, or you're only educating a segment of your community, how well will our community do? And that's where we are. And we make no apology about saying it was absolutely, this situation was based on race. And when I say based on race, had not there been a movement to make sure Dr. Lisa Herring was not the choice, they started a process that was flawed from the intent, because the intent was really not to, let's find the best qualified superintendent. Let's make sure, first priority, let's make sure she's not going to be it. And then we'll go through the motion of pretending that we're doing a search. If there was a guarantee, which we heard, that Dr. Postlewait had pretty much said, if you're going to include my name in there, you need to guarantee me the job, because I have no intention of having to compete.
You mentioned the Emanuel 9. Obviously, people were very upset, mostly the NAACP and the National Action Network, that the Charleston County School Board would actually allow a hiring process to take place during a time of mourning. I'm wondering, where were you emotionally when that took place? It
was one of those things like, here again, you can't believe it, but given the leadership of the board, it didn't surprise me. Then I spoke with one of the board members, who are African-American board member, and I said, because remember the board chair said, we talked to the members of the board, and they thought we talk to all of the African-American. I spoke to one of those African-American board members. No discussion had even been had with him about even moving forward. So we know that we have a board chair, as I said before, that's willing to lie, and even lie in the public, because she makes statement and then she contradicts the statement she made. So the lack of concern, because it's not just that these folks are dead and have not even been buried yet. You're talking about the children, the grandchildren, the nieces, the nephew, the brothers, the cousin of 9 dead people in our community. And we're talking about, we have to get someone in place. We want to move forward because we want to have, what would have done since you got an interim superintendent that the superintendent wasn't here on day 1? I mean, on school, at least Berkeley County is not moving that way. Let's get the best candidate. And while we even believe that the whole process was a way to circumvent any consideration of Dr. Herring, that they're moving forward was really their message, a way of saying to us, even though we know we're doing what we're doing, we don't care. What you gonna do about it? Because usually what you do, you make the noise, you come and you plead and you beg, and then we ignore you and you go away.
But you also told the poll story this, it's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away.
They don't realize how bad things are going to get before they get better. Tell me, when will the NAACP and really the African American community in Charleston work together with Dr. Postlewait and the Charleston County School Board?
I don't know what the community is. To me, it's like asking me to give the devil respect and have a conversation. That's me. I am one of these we have had conversation with the sons of the Confederate.
Sure.
Without any, But when you are part of the process, you can't do these kinds of stuff. Are you then associate with people that are doing the kinds of stuff? We've got some really racist people on the board. We just may as well call it what it is. And what we're seeing even now after her appointment, as recent as yesterday, the movement to move in folks in certain areas that will satisfy the majority parents of students, that we want to make sure that these are who we've got in these areas. We're going to move some folks out, and I promise you, if the consideration is not to put the best possible teachers in the school that needs it most, then we're just going around in circles.
Refresh your memory. It was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when KKK letters were distributed throughout the Dorchester-Willow neighborhood. I know that you were visibly upset about it. In fact, something with your phone, that you had too many phone calls, you couldn't answer them, and you were just described.
Okay. What happened there is that we here at the NAACP office, so we were referring to phone calls, the calls were coming into the NAACP office, that we were getting threatening phone calls. Not just harassing, threatening, death threat phone calls here, to a point where the caller kept calling so much, we just stopped answering the phone because every time you picked it up, it was there. We immediately reported it to SLED and to the local police department, so they were already looking into that. I wanted to be clear with the authorities, the police department, that we don't want this to be looked at as just harassing calls. In the wake of what has just happened and the resurgence of the clan mentality, and we for years have seen different times flyers out, particularly in the West Ashley area, about the Klan's activities. But free speech give them the right to do that. When they started dialing our numbers and making threats, they've taken it to a new level. So then I read about the flyers in the Dorchester-Willing area. Here you're in North Charleston, and with the backdrop of the death and all of this, right. I then called every one of these entities. I called Charleston Sheriff Department in North Charleston, and asked them to make a visible appearance, press conference or something, to make sure the message is out there clear to both the perpetrator and those victims who are being victimized by threatful letters and flyers in their neighborhood in the wake of night. I said, they need to be clear that it's not 1960, it's not 1950, where you can go to people's neighborhood, terrorize them, because surely this is not a recruitment when you go in black neighborhoods and you're putting out flyers and we're here, and, those kinds of stuff. So that's the stuff that got me. And so I wanted that message to get out to the community that the NAACP is watching. We're engaging the law enforcement to make sure, and also to send a message, if you've got complaints, we're here, we're listening, we're vigilant, we're paying attention. So that's what happened there. But to move this even a bit farther, recently, and I don't know whether you've heard about it, there have been 2 gentlemen that have been pretty much lost now for 3 weeks, and that they were supposedly fishermen going to board. They lived in one of those neighborhoods where all those flyers were being there. Now, for whatever reason, and I had discussion last night with the police department, and because a family member called me to let me know that these guys, nobody knows what happened to them. The family doesn't believe that they were lost at sea and drowned. 3 weeks now, they said these guys were in the morning of, they were actually seen with life vests on. So we don't believe that there's been a death or anything. At least the family doesn't believe. But what's strange is the fact that there's been no media coverage on this. 3 men have been lost since the 8th of July here in Charleston, and yet we get media attention about the 2 kids in Florida. And so I'm asking North Charleston, who took the initial report, DNR is involved in it. Right. The sister, who's a family member of mine by being an in-law, called yesterday and said, Don, I can't even get the news media to talk about it. So I'm talking to the deputy chief in North Charleston. He's to call me back today. Sure. These are the kind of stuff that just rend terror, because you're thinking, what could have happened here? Where are we not finding? Why is the media not talking about it? The last thing I'm sure the media or the leadership of these cities would want is something else bad happening where it has a race overtone to it. So this is what we're dealing with.
I want to take you back to June 17, 2015. I was actually sitting in my house on that Wednesday night when I got the information about it on my Twitter newsfeed, and said 9 people shot at another Emanuel. I thought it had to been incorrect information. And I remember calling you maybe an hour later, and you were just trying to get downtown and gather your information. When you look back at that day, what memories still play back in your mind?
I remember I got the call. I had turned in early because I had a long work day around my business. And I got the call from a gentleman, and he says, Madam President, you need to get downtown. Says I think there have been 9 murders at Mother Emanuel. And it was like, I didn't even know what to say. No, okay. And the first thing I thought about is my best friend is a member of Mother Emanuel. And that evening, I stopped by her shop on Northwoods Mall because she has a tailor shop, and I'm messing with her, and she said they having some kind of conditional meeting or quarterly meeting or something there, and I'm not going to go because she was there she has a tailor shop, so I kind of tied her up there. And when I got the message, I said, wonder did she go to the church? All I can think about, did she go to the church? And then I called her on the phone, and she was just screaming because Ethel was like her first cousin. She would just scream. I mean, it's like, and I wanted, can I come and get you? No, her son is going to take her, da-da-da-da-da. And when I got down there, the more I got there, and believe you me, do you know, walking down there after we parked our car, some young kids in a black car, in a blue color car, was screaming a racist thing about the killing at the church. White kids. So we went down there, and when we got there, it's like, I was just like walking around in circle. All I can think is when the sun comes up tomorrow, because we're going to have to get through the day. And I stayed there for about 3 hours. I never went out to the meeting or anything. I just stayed in there with the family. And because they were only allowing the family members and, folks like us, they let us come in, my sisters and I. And it's one of those things that embedded in your memory. It won't go away anytime soon. Never. It will never go. And then when they were telling me, and Pinckney had been to one of our recent press conference. It just, and 3 of those people were members of the NAACP. It's the kind of stuff that you can't even fathom that will happen in the church. But it tells us, and while I am heartened that the family members are able to forgive, because I know what that does for them. Okay, I know what that does for them. The outpouring has been, it's beyond remarkable, because as we talk about racism, the silver lining in all of this is the majority of people are not racist. No. The majority of white people are not racist. No. You could tell that it's just that the bad elements, we got enough of bad elements in our society in every walks of life and stuff, that these things shouldn't happen, but they happen. Because we find out that we're still getting killings of mass murders elsewhere that randomly is doing it. This thing just is painful because, this is we know who we want to kill. We want to kill black people in a black church. That's what I want to do. And it goes back to, Quintin, to what I say about the school situation. Okay. If we continue to breed and feed the notion that it's them against us, and we're bringing up young men who hadn't been here long enough to even know what the flag really stands for, then we are part of that problem, perpetuating, breeding it, feeding it. So that's part of how we tie in. If we keep teaching this division, that it happens. But you talk about living infamy. This will forever. And we just got a call from our national office that McDonald wants to partner with the NAACP to present $90,000, and they want us to be a part, which speaks volumes to the way they see the NAACP in this all. Right. They said we don't need even them to know McDonald's, but we want NAACP to be part of the presentation. because like the piece in the paper this morning that says, we've been screaming about this flag. Image matters.
Okay.
If you're a Christian and you believe, that flag matters. I mean, the cross matters. So if you are racist and you believe in that flag, it matters. So you can't say symbolism doesn't matter. If you walk, I told my friend, I spoke to a group the other night, and I was one of maybe 25 people, and then only African American. I was there. They had invited me to speak, and I would say, if you work somewhere and everybody in a position of authority looks like you, then you don't need to ask me what needs to happen, because oftentimes, what can we do? Well, the obvious has become the accepted. The obvious has become, this is normal. So folks tend to, even people who are not racist, tend to it just doesn't dawn on them that, it doesn't dawn on them when you walk up to me and say, you know what, you are so articulate. You know what you just said to me. And I told them, you just said to me, I exceeded your expectation. That's not good. When you have that priest and we hear it all the time. This person's so smart. And normally we don't hear that when they're referring to somebody else. And they don't mean that
Harm, yeah.
Mean harm. But that's what we're living with.
And you touched on the flag. That happened, I believe, 2 weeks ago. I was at work when that took place. I was watching it on my video stream from my phone. I'm wondering, where were you emotionally when that took place?
I was there in Columbia. I hadn't been in Columbia the whole time when all of this started, and the legislators and all are doing their thing about bringing the flag down. I didn't see a need to be there. We did the groundwork. Okay. We made the statement. We stayed the course. When I say we, the NAACP, the state conference, Lonnie Randolph, that whole group, they were there. We went to the march on, King Day at the Dome.
Right.
We did our part.
Right.
And now the Lord stepped in. Because the flag came down, not because the NAACP had the sanction going. We stayed the course. The flag came down because 9 people died. While they may not have offered themselves up, but their death is what brought the flag down. So on the morning of, I went to Columbia the Thursday before, the night before, and so I was standing there across the street under the tree where I could see the flag as it slid down, and literally goose pimple. It's like no tears or anything, because I'm like, I am actually living to see that symbol that reminded me every time I was there, you're less than. You were a slave. Your ancestors were slaves. You're not equal to the rest of us. We don't need to really educate your children, because we got places where we got jobs for you guys. We got things for your children to do.
Well, with that, NAACP Charleston Branch President Dot Scott, it's always good talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Anytime.
And having me.
That's what I do.